And we are live. Hello, everyone. How? It's Wednesday. How are you doing today? I was gonna say, how are we doing on this Tuesday? No, we're not Tuesday. We're Wednesday because yesterday I got swamped by work because today I was in Paris for work. I loved it. I had to wake up. Why is my chair so low? Like up. I don't know if it makes me that much taller, but it psychologically feels better. So sorry for moving the stream around this week because I was in Paris this morning and so I had to prepare my. I was speaking on panel, so I had to speak. I had to prepare that. Lovely time having to take the train at 6:30 in the morning. Loved it, especially since the time of the panel was moved, so I could have actually taken the next train. Painful, but well, I woke up a bit earlier than usual today. But I'm back. I'm now back at home. It's fine. It was warm in Paris. I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it's warm in Brussels as well, but I think it's. I don't think it's that as warm as in Paris. Let me check. Let's see. Bruxelles météo. Like, what's the temperature right now? Yeah, no, today it's 27 in Brussels, and in Paris I think it was like 30 something. Yeah, 33. Yeah. So yeah, much better in Brussels than in Paris. Especially since I was walking around and everything. Well, doesn't matter. So yeah, good to see you. What else do I have to tell you, Ayadexenu? Before we start, yes, small bits of information. Next week is going to be the final week of the season, so to say. Like already, Brussels is starting to slow down. So we'll do next week content as usual, so news review on the Tuesday. We'll do on the Friday in French the political FAQ as a kind of end of season thing for stream for them, and I will stream the week after. Probably on the Tuesday, so the 21st of June, 21st of July, which is a day off in Belgium. But we will not be doing like a normal stream. We'll be doing a gaming stream with, as usual, a bit of a Europe sprinkle on top of it. So I'm not going to tell you yet what we're going to play. But it's going to be fun. I swear there's going to be a link with the EU. It's not a game that we have played on the channel, I don't think. So yeah, it's going to be fun. That will be the actual final stream of the season. This point will be chill. So playing games, discussing, having fun, a bit of FAQ, etc. Most likely I will do it in English. Most likely. Because like the French will have already the political FAQ on the Friday before, so for those who follow the stream in English, might as well do something special for you as well. So you'll get the gaming stream, which is going to be fun, where we'll have fun. So you can already put that in your agenda. 21st of July, final stream of the season. And then I was going to say I'm going to be on holiday. No, I'm not going to be on holiday. I'm still going to be working for actual work, and I'll be also working on the channel so that you get plenty of things when we come back. Probably first week of September, either last week of August or first week of September. I have to look at the agenda to see what comes, what is most practical. But yeah. You have the gist of it, where we are slowing down, things are slowing down in Brussels, so that means that also things are slowing down for me. We will all get some well-deserved rest over the summer, and then we'll come back in September motivated with plenty of new things. I do hope that, that's this summer will be busy for me because I'm planning many things, and I hope I will be able to do everything, like fingers crossed and all that, because if I can do everything that I want to do, that's going to be good for you. good for the channel as well. So I hope I will be able to do everything that I want. What else do I need to tell you before we start? Oh yeah, since it's the first time since since I did that, like I'm just checking. Yeah, I'm officially a corporate since the 1st of July. I am MEP assistant what is it? Incorporated. Yeah, incorporated. I finally created my my independent status, so technically now I have a company, which is good. So don't forget to sub. That's much appreciated. I mean, of course, do it if you want. No obligation whatsoever. But yeah, exciting times. I figured it was finally time to do it. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit freaking out, I have to say, about the admin. Like, I have to find an accountant and stuff like that. Things I'm like, I don't like doing this stuff. I have to do it, but I think that once I found like kind of the rhythm, it will be fine, because I don't think I'm like that's such a complicated case. But yeah, that's will help also doing new content, new other things if things go well. So yeah, we will do like we'll do. No, I'm not gonna do like something special, but like at the end of the year we'll have a bit like the first 6 months we'll see if everything was up to expectations and what it means for the future. But for now, I'm officially for sure officially going corporate. And yeah, I think like in terms of introduction, that's pretty much all I had to tell you at this stage. Yeah, so program of today. News review as usual. We'll talk about what is the chat control. So basically, the parliament voting again on a law for child protection, fighting against child pornography and stuff like that. Following like a gambit that the EPP and Metsola are doing. We will go into the details of why it's a gambit and why they are doing this. So it's about like reintroducing authorization for platforms to check conversations like on your WhatsApp, Messenger, or whatever, for content, for child pornography content, and remove it accordingly. So we will discuss about that. Then we'll talk about Serbia, was trying to accelerate its candidacy to join the EU, the process, and they wanted to open new chapters of negotiation for their adhesion to the EU. That did not work out so well, so we will read about that as well. And to finish, one article about simplification / deregulation, which as you may remember, is kind of the big buzzword in Brussels since 2024, since this new mandate, and almost 2 years into the 2 years into the mandate, companies are a bit not as hyped about the simplification agenda as they were initially, and so we will read why they are a bit less enthusiastic about this new drive of the Commission of the EU to simplify legislation. So those are the 3 main things we will discuss. As usual, if there are other things you want to discuss, well, you have 10 fingers and a chat, you let me know, and yeah, we discuss. All right. Without further ado, let's get into it. We'll talk first about Sesame. So, context. You may remember in April we discussed it on stream. There was a vote that took place. Give me a sec. Up. Fuck off. There we go. There was a vote in the parliament on whether to allow or not, or to prolong rather, the authorization for platforms, for tech companies to look at private conversations, to track down child pornography and basically remove that sort of content. This is something that was very controversial, that was given, like this policy was given the nickname chat control by its opponents. So the idea that platforms and the cops and the state is going to look into your private conversation on WhatsApp, on Messenger, on whatever you want, and under the guise of child protection, would actually look at your conversations, and then it starts with the children, and then it will become a witch hunt for opponent LGBT people or whatever. So following the pressure, the parliament voted against that, which meant that rules that were already existing, that were already allowing platforms to do these sort of things, stopped applying. And following this, we have Metsola and the parliament, and the EPP rather, that are trying to go back again at this and say, okay, we need to vote again on this topic, and to tweak the procedure so that it's a configuration that is more favorable to the adoption of the law. And so that process was spearheaded by Roberta Metsola, the president of the European Parliament, and the votes, actually, because there are several votes, are taking place this week. So there was one on Tuesday, which was about the procedure, and there's going to be a vote tomorrow on the content of the law in itself, which of course is proving as controversial as it was way back when. So let's read about it. So Metsola heads for clash with her own parliament over child abuse bill. The Parliament President and EU countries are playing procedural politics to pass a law to scan internet services for child abuse material. Child abuse material is what you call we call SESAM content, CSAM. And it will likely pass because the procedure indeed makes it more likely to pass, which is like it's not like an urgent. They fast track some things, but yeah, they change the procedure to make it more palatable. Basically, the vote on Tuesday was about the procedure, and it kind of reverses it, like in the sense that to oppose the law, the opponent will have to gather an absolute majority of the European Parliament rather than a simple majority, which of course is a much more difficult majority to gather rather than a simple majority, and is therefore more favorable to the supporters of this law. Alors, when the European Parliament voted down a law allowing tech companies to scan their platforms for child sexual abuse material over privacy concern, the Chamber's president, Roberta Metsola, didn't like the results. So again, like in this file, it's basically on one end data protection activists who are against this law, and on the other side, child protection organizations that are in favor of this law. So two competing public interest, let's say, in competing against each other on this file, which made like for the conversation even more emotional and complicated than usual. And so back in April, the privacy side of the discussion won. They managed to lead the fight to be killed. So now Metsola is asking lawmakers to vote again. By deploying a rarely used procedure, in effect asking EU national government to send Parliament the same bill a second time, Metsola has forced the legislation back onto the Chamber's agenda at its plenary meeting in Strasbourg in the coming days. So again, there the fight is about a negotiation. So you have a proposal of law. That law went to the parliament and went to the council. They're supposed to agree together on a text, and parliament did not agree. So that's what kind of killed the file in April, because the deal was rejected. So now the parliament, what the Metsola is doing is say, okay, we're gonna use another procedure, because normally all this is happening as part of trilogue. So a political negotiation that takes place before the first formal vote on the text to accelerate the procedure. Because normally in the normal procedure, each institution does its own thing. So Parliament does its own thing, Council does its own things, and they're only supposed to vote together at the end, at the very end. Like the Parliament is voting, the Council is voting, then they're sending each other the version, and either you accept the version of the other or you go to the next stage, which takes a lot of time. So to accelerate the agenda of these votes, the practice has become to say, okay, before the first vote, the first official vote between the Parliament and the Council, what we're going to do is do informal negotiation, which became known as trilogue, where you have the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council negotiating together, where basically they pre-bake an agreement, where they negotiate all the three, they agree on a common text, and that common text then goes back to each institution and gets voted on the first round. Which means that, well, since both the Council and the Parliament on the first round of vote have exactly the same version because they found an agreement, well, the file is considered adopted and closed. You don't need to go to the next stage because there's everyone voting the same text. So that's something that has become the common practice. That's the way the wide majority of EU laws are now being voted, meaning that you have the informal negotiation. So that's already on the first the first vote. You have a common text of the Council and Parliament. And since that didn't work in the case of the first round, like in April, Metzola said, okay, well, actually, let's do it again, but according to the old procedure, which means that the Council is sending the text to the Parliament, and the Parliament has to accept it as it is or refuse it. And that's why you need absolute majority to reject it. Let's say they were employing messaging on X regarding voting behavior of the Greens, the SPD, and the AfD, framing the Greens and Social Democrats as being a sort of alliance with the far right united, so to speak, in the fight for more active pedophilic violence. It's an unpleasant communication. Yeah, man. On this, of course, given the topic, that makes it kind of rough communication, because it's easy to say, oh, look, you're trying. I mean, to be fair, you have one side saying accusing the other, oh, you're making the fight against pedophile violence more complicated. You have the other saying, oh, look, you're trying to enable dictatorship by allowing the government to look into the private communication, which is equally false to the other. But yeah, that's given the stake of the fight. Yeah, both sides are using like not, let's say, the best tools of communication at each other, and they're trying to dramatize the consequences of the vote. And there, the CDU is indeed trying to use the fact that the far right is voting, as it happens, the same way as the left, to say, oh, look, you're the ones who are voting with the far right on this. It's a scandal. I mean, to be fair, like the left does it at the same time when the far right votes with the right. So I'd say it's unpleasant, but far from being like unseen things before. How about the impact on law enforcement agencies? Is there a budget dedicated to the implementation of this bill? No, because it's the way it works. So what we're talking about here is, there's two things. There's the temporary law that's because, okay, let's rewind. You have a law that has been proposed in negotiate to create a permanent system allowing private tech companies to be mandated to look into your conversation, etc., to look for child pornography. This permanent law, being stuck again and again and again, was not going anywhere. So what they did for quite some time was to have as a temporary law, so have a side temporary law that gives, okay, why this law is still being negotiated, we are on a temporary basis allowing tech companies to do that voluntarily. So the permanent law says, okay, courts can oblige platforms to look at private conversations to seek child pornography. But since this law for now is not finalized, we put another piece of law that serves for the transition, so to say, that is voluntary, saying, okay, voluntarily, tech companies can decide by themselves, okay, we're going to deploy measures to detect in private conversations, like your WhatsApp, your Messenger, etc., this sort of content. So there, it's not mandating the tech companies. They're saying, okay, if you want to do it, you can do it. So we're talking about initiative from tech companies to do that voluntarily. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. But if they want to, they can. So it's not linked to law enforcement agencies or whatever. Even in the case of the permanent law, it's not about like the means of the enforcement agency. It's about creating the framework that organizes the obligation for tech companies to look for this. So the implementation would not be like something that it would not be like new things that law enforcement agencies will have to do. It's just enabling them to do more on that front. But the real trilogue was not supposed to be the third option when first. Yes, you're right. You're right. The original things, so you have first reading, second reading, and then conciliation, which never happens because we do it. Actually, we do the conciliation before the first reading. So we accelerate by that much the system. Where was I? So in effect asking EU national government to send Parliament the bill a second time, so second reading. Metsola has forced the legislation back onto the Chamber's agenda at its plenary meeting in Strasbourg in coming days. It will now face a new vote on the rules that make it more likely to pass. The bill to fight child sexual abuse materials, so the Sesame Online, would allow tech companies to legally scan their services for the content. So again, here we're talking about pre-existing content. So they have databases of child pornography, something that is like content that is known and recognized as child pornography, and tech companies would be scanning conversation to see if there is a match between the content of your conversation and databases of known child pornography. So it's not like the tech company looking for new child pornographic content, so they're comparing to an existing database. So legally scan the services for the content. Police, investigators, and child rights activists say the bill is critical to stop pedophiles from spreading the illegal content online, but privacy groups, cyber experts, and tech officials have warned the rules enable mass surveillance of internet users. The argument being there, well, it starts with child pornography, then it goes into whatever the government would want. First thing, and second thing, they say, okay, if you try to force, so as you know, a number of services are encrypted. So normally you're not supposed to look into the exchanges apart from the people who are on both sides of the conversation. And so one of the concerns is that this law would introduce an obligation for tech companies to have a backdoor, meaning that how can I show it? Okay. Phone 1, phone 2. We're having a private conversation. Normally under encrypted conversation, nobody can read apart from this phone and this phone. It's fully encrypted. If you're the tech company itself cannot look at that conversation because it's encrypted. The fear of the cyber expert is that this law, by saying, okay, we need to have the tech companies being able to look into the conversation between the two, they have to create a backdoor to be able to look at it. And so creating a vulnerability, indeed, that could be potentially exploited beyond that, either by government, but also by bad actors. And so it would facilitate, for instance, a hacker, if they find this vulnerability, they could exploit it to get in the devices and get access to the conversation and whatever. So there's also a question of cybersecurity at play there. And so the core of one of the core of the conversation was, okay, is this law going to facilitate the creation of vulnerabilities or not? Is it threatening the security of communication? That was one big part of the discussion on the technical side of things. And on the other end was, okay, we have a big problem of child pornography. I mean, Europe is the biggest hosting place of child pornography in the world. So EU is like, yeah, okay, we need to kind of do something about that. Let's scan this content to try to track down this sort of network and complicate the sharing of this content. So again, two objectively legitimate interests that are conflicting with each other. No, we're not in a fight. Oh, there's a private economic interest versus like the public interest, public good interest. There, it's two objectively public interests that are, bucking heads together. And the question is, okay, how do you maintain balance, and which one do you privilege? So the issue has heated up politics in Europe in past years and drawn in everyone from tech mogul Elon Musk to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to weigh in on the issue. I don't quite understand why German conservatives are fighting so doggedly for this. Under the established case law of the Federal Constitutional Court, it's not possible in Germany to scan private chat on a broad scale without specific reasons, regardless of whether this is done by the state or outsourced. This appears as a battle where German politicians have nothing to gain, but very likely a great deal to lose. Well, German conservatives are, so CDU, CSU, defense of family is something that is very, let's say, a core interest, a core political interest for them. So like the idea we're going to defend family, we're supporting law enforcement, etc. It plays very well into the playbook of any conservative party in Germany and elsewhere. And there are indeed, German law is known to be particularly strict when it comes to privacy because of the power of its own history, of course. But there, you're not allowed to scan to scan content, as you say, without a specific reason. There, the specific reason is fighting illegal content, something that is outright illegal, and protect the superior interest of children, meaning finding and fighting child pornography. So this would legally fall into a legitimate reason to look for this kind of content, because again, there, what we're talking about is not like looking detail what people are saying, is to check whether the content of a conversation matches with a database of existing child pornography content. If there is a match, then it's removed, or it's removed and notified to the authority. Or I don't remember in which order it happens, but yeah. So you have this idea, like it's not something that comes out of the blue. You have a specific reason that legally could say, okay, out of public interest, yes, you can supersede another public interest. Entering cryptography. Yeah, that's yeah. But what you type save on your phone or what is displayed on your screen could be captured, so Google and Apple could spy on the picture or message, then the messaging application could do so. That's the cybersecurity side of stuff. It's like, okay, if you build that vulnerability, then potentially this could happen. Where was I? Metzola's center-right EPP is clearly and actively undermining our position as Parliament, said Raquel Garcia Hermida van der Walle, a Dutch member of the Liberal Renew group, about a move to bring the same bill back for a second vote. A spokesperson for Metzola said the issue was raised and asked for at an earlier meeting of heads of the Parliament political groups. No group actively objected to the plan, Politico reported earlier. So, There he questioned also the role of Metsui, and that's Metsui has been criticized a bit on this because MEPs are saying, why, what the hell is Metsola doing in there? She's not supposed to, like, she's just the president of the parliament. She's not supposed to take an active role in deciding, okay, what do we vote, what do we not vote? It's not her, she should not be able to do that. And Metsola's office is defending herself by saying, well, actually, there was a proposal made at the Conference of Presidents, which is the group where you have the president of the parliament, but also the head of all the political groups of the parliament, so EPP, socialists, liberals, etc. And say, well, the idea was raised, and nobody said no. So from there, that means that, okay, I'm putting the issue because, nobody was against it, so fine, we're doing it. The EU has struggled to draft laws that overcome the deep division between child rights advocates and privacy proponents, and has seen legislative attempts end in a stalemate time after time. The bill up for vote in coming days is temporary fix, a stopgap measure that exempts tech companies from certain obligations under the block privacy law on the confidentiality of communication, allowing these firms to scan for sesame. So like I said, the thing they're voting is the temporary measure. It's what is supposed to serve as a transition towards a final system. And as a reminder, these rules were already applying. Those were an exception that were existing before and that were regularly prolonged. And in April, what happened is that the parliament voted down what would prolong the application of that rule. So prior to April, tech companies could already voluntarily, if they wanted, look into the conversation and check that against child pornography databases. And following the vote in April, they were not anymore able to do that. And so their part of the government say, well, wait, by doing this, we actually made the protection of child protection worse than before because we removed something that was existing and that now tech companies cannot do legally anymore. So we need to reintroduce this temporary measure until we have the more permanent solution in parallel. So it's something that was already applying before and since April got stopped. And now they're trying to reintroduce it, reintroduce this exemption until there's the permanent solution. So lawmakers are negotiating the permanent legal solution in parallel, but those talks have also stalled after a political negotiation late last month. So again, in parallel, they're working on the permanent solution that says, okay, you need to have a judge, you have a much heavier procedure, let's say, to organize how and why tech companies would be required to look into private conversations to check for sesame. Right now, it's you do it if you can and if you want, sort of. The attempt to unblock the bill is forcing a legislator to dust off their EU procedural textbook. So we stopped something before preparing an alternative. We stopped something that was ongoing, in the sense that, so you had the negotiation that was ongoing to make the permanent solution. That negotiation has been there for years because, as you understand, it's a heavily complicated and politicized discussion. And so, because this permanent solution was dragging, because of negotiation, they had the temporary solution in the meantime. And what happened in April is that the parliament voted down this temporary solution. So they stopped the thing that was serving as a band-aid while the permanent solution was being worked out. Even if that temporary, what was supposed to be a temporary solution, has been ongoing for years because the permanent solution was stuck for years. Where was I? The European Parliament and Council of the EU are following the steps of the ordinary legislative procedure, which, despite its name, is almost never used in its entirety. Usually, after the Commission proposes a law, the Council and the Parliament produces competing versions, and then they hash out a deal in a three-way negotiation known in Brussels as a trilogue. So that's what I was expecting. You are Commission release a file, Parliament, Council work on their version, then they meet, they make an agreement, it goes back. Oh, look, magically we have the same text, we agree on the same text. Parfait, we can go home, and the law is adopted. That's what has become the normal procedure. The 1.0 was already in place but struck down, and negotiation for 2.0 is still not... Yeah, okay. Sort of. Yes. Technically, this means that lawmakers only follow the first couple of steps of EU lawmaking procedures and almost never reach the formal final mechanism for managing disagreements between the institutions, so the conciliation. Earlier this year, a long-stalled law on air passenger rights was passed using the dreaded conciliation procedure, so the normal procedure that is almost never used, because we use trilogue instead. Before that, one has to go back all the way to 2013 to find another example of the procedure's uses. Like 13 years since the last time that one was being used. The version of the Sesame Bill is one that European governments have already wholeheartedly backed. National capitals and council in the EU in the past days cleared the way for the bill to go to Parliament following Metzola's request that come in late June. On Monday, that was an article that was published before, on Monday, Metzola's EPP is widely expected to file a formal request to hold an urgent vote on the bill, which happened. On Tuesday, lawmakers vote on whether to hold that urgent vote, which has also happened and was supported, so it passed. And finally, on Thursday, the plenary chamber would vote on the actual proposal. So, out of the 3 steps, we are now at step 3. Tomorrow is step 3. Monday was putting on the agenda, EPP 1. Tuesday was, do we do this other procedure as an emergency vote? It passed, also because the socialists decided to support the EPP. And tomorrow, we have the actual vote on the substance. Using this unusual procedure means backers of the bill, the center-right EPP to which Metsola belongs, and EU capitals have the upper hand. To reject or amend the bill coming from Council, the Parliament requires an absolute majority, meaning at least half of all members of the Parliament, or 361 votes. To adopt it requires a mere simple majority, meaning half of the members present on that day. So the threshold to reject the proposal of the Council is much higher than a normal majority. Because you assume it's a majority as if every single member of the Parliament was present that day and voting, which is usually not the case. When Parliament voted down the Council position in March, it did so with 311 votes against the proposal, 220 in favour, and 92 abstentions, an outcome that, in a potential vote on Thursday, would fall short of killing the bill. If the Parliament can't reach a decision after 3 months, the Council's position is automatically adopted, the procedure rule states. So this way of doing things is giving an edge to the Council. I mean, the way it's being done is okay. The Council is proposing its version, either you agree to it, or if you don't agree to it, well, actually the Council version passes anyway. Do I watch the DGCOM pre-session briefing for journalists? No, I did not. I don't watch those. But I'm certain that it was discussed. I am certain it was discussed. I mean, you have the DGCOM, you have the DGCOM briefing, and then you have the head of groups that also make their own briefing. But I'm certain it was discussed there. I would be extremely surprised if it was not part of the presentations. I still don't understand why a political party that considers himself left would support that. Defense of the children. You're saying, okay, we're trying to protect children, so people in a situation of vulnerability from predators. So yes, it's legitimate to allow tech companies to take actions to fight against content that is very well known to be legal, no doubt, and especially as a temporary solution until we find a more final one. Like, that's a perfectly valid narrative for someone left from the left to support that idea. Again, it's in this debate you have two perfectly valid public interests at stake: privacy and cybersecurity, child protection, and you may have MEPs who are more sensitive to one of these public interests or the other. So anyone that I don't see someone. I don't see an incompatibility for someone calling themselves left-wing to say yes. I consider it's important to do that. Yes, but the real perpetrator easily bypass these scans by switching to other platforms. There's that. It's true. The point of these things is to make it much more complicated to share this sort of content, because today situation is you have on devices on day-to-day things that we use day-to-day, plenty of these things. By allowing tech companies to more easily crack down on these things, yes, perpetrators could switch platforms. They could go to the dark web. They could go to much more obscure platforms to share the contents. But that means that the content becomes more complicated to access. So it's kind of, in a way, you're fighting it by reducing the amount of people who could potentially easily access that. It's like fighting piracy. Yes, there's going to be piracy always, but by making it more and more complicated to easily access pirated content, or in less good quality, etc., at some point people don't bother, or it's much more complicated for people to bother, and that doesn't like, it's only part of the equation. It's not like the one side. It's not like the solution that will solve everything. It's just like one side of the equation. Then of course you have the other side of the equation, which is fighting the networks and all that. So it doesn't like do anything about. It doesn't affect anything on the side of finding the perpetrators, close the networks and everything. It's just like making it much more complicated to share this sort of content on, let's say, run-of-the-mill, easily accessible platforms, and choking the part of the networks. Are there less MEP on the last plenary before the summer? Is it a strategy to vote on that day? Oh, I don't think so. Like, there might be slightly less MEPs, but I don't think it's like that significant. So I would be surprised that it's part of the strategy. Like, in any case, the change in procedure already gives the supporter of the law an edge in this. Because again, even if the parliament doesn't manage to find a majority to support the law, if it doesn't get so, 3 months later, by default, the law is considered adopted. So whether the vote is now or in September, it doesn't change much. So many are in vacation. Some might have left. Not many. Like, people would be leaving, like, for the most part, like probably tomorrow afternoon. So after the vote. But it's possible that some of them are already away. It's possible. But again, like, it's not significant. Like, the moment where, especially in plenaries, like, it's more on the committee meetings where you will see like attendance drop as you get closer to summer. Like, plenary votes, MEP, it's 1 week a month. It's something that is very watched. If they don't show up, they can have penalties and everything. So MEPs will tend to attend that, even the one in July. But after the one in July, they're gone. Like, if you have a committee meeting the week after the July plenary, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of MEPs coming to Brussels, but Strasbourg, not so much. And yeah, in the end, it's the procedure is doing the heavy lifting there. There's a recess. So formally, hop, yes. Let's see, Europarl. Let's see the calendar. Hop, boom, 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 et boom. Okay, that's the plenary, the agenda of the parliament. So, up we are this week. So red week, that's the official calendar of the parliament. You see there's colors everywhere. To each color corresponds something. So red weeks are plenary weeks. Those like salmon color are committee weeks. So when you have parliamentary committees in Brussels. Those are, we call that green weeks. They are more like magenta or whatever. Not magenta, I forgot the color, but yeah, we call them traditionally green week. Are constituency week, so MEPs are not in Brussels. And then you have the white week, which are the recess period, where there's nothing in the parliament happening. So we are in July. This is the plenary. This is the plenary week. Next week is committee week. So there are technically committee meetings that are still happening next week in Brussels. In practice, I don't expect that it will be the most crowded committee meetings ever. And then Green Week are there. There will be absolutely no one. It will be absolute ghost town. Talking about low attendance, are we talking about the French RN members? Ah, no. Not tonight. But yeah, basically, like, from, like, for sure from the week of the 20, like, yeah, it's gonna be ghost town. There's gonna be no one in Parliament until 31st of August. And next week is already going to be, like, very, very, very quiet in Brussels. So yeah, you have a month of recess. Green Week, which is basically recess. Assistants and staff will start to come back from holiday there, and then the actual restart of the year of the session of the work is 31st of August. Hop là. Where was I? Blah 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 blah. Oh, in the final thing, in the current parliament, finding an absolute majority is really quite difficult, said Christine Rey, a professor of European politics at the RT School in Berlin. This week is quiet in Brussels. Yeah, I mean, it's already quiet. I mean, this week is quiet in Brussels because it's also plenary week, so people in the parliament are in Strasbourg. So, of course, you're not gonna have many people in Brussels because, like, the parliament is in Strasbourg. But it's July, so it adds to it, indeed. All right, let's continue. So the EU to extend temporary message scanning regime to detect child sexual abuse online. So it's another article taking place after the vote that was yesterday. So the vote to allow the procedure. So the legislation has been dubbed check control by its critics due to its privacy implications, particularly on end-to-end encrypted communications. Just let me go back to my... there. So the European Parliament is set to vote again this week on controversial legislation that would allow technology companies to scan online communication for child sexual abuse material. This time, it will be voted under different voting rules, which will make it easier to be approved thanks to a political move by the EPP. The legal framework that expired on the 3rd of April has allowed platforms such as WhatsApp and Messenger to take voluntary measures derogating from e-privacy rules to identify users suspected of sharing sesame content. While a new version of the law is being discussed, a temporary extension of this scheme was proposed by the European Commission and rejected by the Parliament in March with 311 against, 228 in favour and 92 abstentions. The legislation has been dubbed track control by its critics due to the privacy implications, particularly its effects on end-to-end encrypted communication. Children are protected by smart enforcement, not by scanning the private messages of millions of innocent people, Green EFA MEP Ignacio Marino told Euronews, defining the law as mass surveillance. But the EPP, the largest group in the parliament, revived the temporary extension through a rarely used legislative procedure. EPP MEPs largely voted against it in March because of some amendments to the original text introduced by the socialist rapporteur Birgit Zippel and other left-wing lawmakers aimed at restricting the scope of the scanning, EPP officials told Euronews. So, back when it was rejected in March, it was rejected to a good extent because of votes of the EPP, because the rapporteur had changed the rapporteur, who was German socialist, very much against it, introduced amendments that was weakening the proposal of the Commission. So the Commission was just saying, okay, we prolong more the system that was existing until we have the final solution. The rapporteur in the parliament, so the main negotiator of the file, the socialist, introduced amendments to weaken to an extent the law, introducing things that part of the things that were discussed in the but not yet agreed in the final solution, whatever. No, very wrong wording. In the permanent solution rather. And EPP say, well, no, you're making things worse, so we are voting against that. And now EPP is saying, okay, we're coming back to the version proposed by the parliament, by the Commission and the Council. EPP leader Manfrever has been pushing for the extension to be adopted without any changes and found a way to make it happen. According to people familiar with the matter, on the 17th of June, the EPP requested the Parliament's President Roberta Metsola to push forward with the interim file, and no other group objected. The day after, Metsola urged the EU leaders to move on with legislation during her intervention at the EU summit, and member states subsequently agreed to reinstate the interim measure last week. So basically, Metsola, EPP said, hey, what if we did that? No one objected at the Conference of Presidents, where you have all the political groups. Metsola then went to the council, so the member states say, hey guys, it would be nice if you proposed, you sent to the parliament your version of the temporary solution on Sesame. It would be great, because we could vote again on it. Council say, yeah, sure, let's do that. They voted, and now they're sending the file to the parliament, and the parliament say, oh, well, now we have to vote on it. The version of the extension adopted by EU countries has no substantive changes and would allow online services providers to detect, report, and remove online child sexual abuse until 2028. It now has to be greenlit by the Parliament, but the EPP's move entails a procedural twist that gives supporters of the law a significant advantage. So, under the ordinary legislative procedure, a text is adopted unless an absolute majority of all the MEPs, at least 361, reject or amend it. Despite its name, the procedure is seldom used in drafting new law, as Parliament and Council often adopt their own position on single bills and then negotiate the details of the final version. Usually, when the Parliament rejects a text, the Council stops working on it and the Commission eventually withdraws it. Now we are forced into a second vote that questions the essence of democracy, Green MEP Marketa Gregorova told Euronews, saying it threatens the essence of democracy, slight exaggeration, blaming the EPP for imposing their priority through an unusual move. The vote on the extension will be held on Thursday if the Parliament approves, and the Parliament approved, the urgent procedure requested by the EPP, which is pushing to adopt the interim rules as soon as possible. And so, EPP won the vote with the support of the Socialists, and tomorrow we'll have the final showdown on the vote. and we'll see whether the opponents of this temporary measure will manage to gather an absolute majority or not. Any questions on that before we move on to our next topic, which is going to be about Serbia. Up. Don't see any comments or questions, so all right, let's move on then. Boom. All right. Sorry, quick, too long didn't read. Parliament is voting tomorrow on a temporary measure that allows tech companies to scan for child pornography in private conversations, basically, thanks to a procedure of the parliament of the EPP that is kind of reversing the majorities. Is that already in place? It was in place, then it was stopped by a vote of the parliament, and the EPP is trying to put it back in. And it's probably gonna pass. That's the TLDR. All right. Let's talk about Serbia. So, as you know, Serbia is a candidate to join the EU. But, Serbia has not been the best student in the class when it comes to respecting the rules of the EU to be able to join the EU, notably on the state of democracy, alignment with the foreign policy of the EU, etc., etc. Isn't this guy supposed to resign? Yes, indeed. Vucic has said that he was resigning to allow new elections to take place. But so all that to say, Serbia's candidacy not super hype because of what Vucic was doing in power and the degradation of the state of democracy in Serbia. With that background, the Commission and some capitals, namely France and Germany, were pushing nonetheless to open new chapter of negotiations with Serbia, basically as a way to ensure that Serbia still pays attention to what the EU wants, rather than going to see are the Chinese, are the Russians. And so, yeah, now we read about the attempt of the Commission, Paris and Berlin to move ahead with Serbia's candidacy. So, EU Commission and capitals headed for collision over Serbia's Cluster 3 negotiation. Clusters, it's the name that you give to negotiations to join the EU. When you open the negotiations, you have, I think, 33 or 35 chapters that are divided in clusters, so thematic bundle of chapters. And here, we're saying, okay, we want to open the third cluster, the third part, the third thematic bag of chapters. All right, Brussels is seeking to revive Serbia's accession bid and could discuss as early as Wednesday its case for opening Cluster 3. But EU capitals remain divided over whether recent measures are enough to offset wider democratic backsliding. For some, it's too much, too soon. Serbia's decision to repeal controversial judiciary reforms that has reignited debate inside the EU over how to balance strategic engagement with democratic standards, exposing divisions over whether Belgrade has done enough to revive its accession bid. To give you a background as well, when you are a candidate to join the EU, meaning like you have been recognized as a candidate, negotiations are ongoing. Even if you are not member of the EU, you get EU money. The EU will give you some money as part of the what is called the pre-adhesion funds. So basically say, okay, well, now that we are actively negotiating for you to join the EU, we're going to give you some money to help support you so that you can accelerate like your transition and be ready faster to join the EU. And for Serbia, it's quite a lot of money for them. It's quite a big chunk of money compared to the size of the country. And as, like I said, Serbia has not been the best student when it comes notably to the rule of law, etc., etc., and was still getting EU money, the EU was starting to say, well, actually, we're starting to get a bit pissed off. If you do not do those sorts of reforms, we're going to cut you off and remove money and stop your access to some of the money, which of course triggered a bit Serbia and say, oh shit, we still want the money, and so they made a number of reforms. Say, oh look, we're fixing the things you don't like. Send us back the money. And the question is, okay, were these reforms enough, A, to bring back the money, and 2, to justify a relaunch of the negotiations? A bit like Hungary, yeah, kind of like Hungary. Like Vucic was seen as was very friend with Orban. So the European Commission on Monday presented member states with an information note outlining why it believes Serbia's recent reforms justify opening Cluster 3 of its accession negotiations, which Belgrade has sought to unlock after years of stalemate. The note dated 3rd of July and seen by Euronews says the Commission believes Serbia has remedied the backsliding identified earlier this year and taken steps to strengthen the capacity of the country's prosecutor office for organized crime, so basically how to fight corruption. It acknowledges, however, that further work is still required in the judicial and prosecutorial system. But interviews with more than a dozen diplomats, EU officials and experts suggest Serbia's latest rollback has done little to bridge divisions among member states, whose unanimous backing is required before the accession process can move forward. Since we are in the enlargement procedure, everything is done by unanimity. So every time you want to open or close a chapter of negotiation, you need a vote of the council and you need unanimity. If one country doesn't want, it blocks the thing. That's what happened, for instance, with Ukraine, where Hungary blocked the negotiations on Ukraine because he wanted to piss off everyone. And now the question, in the case of Serbia, is, okay, will everyone be convinced that the reforms that they made are enough to address the concerns when it comes to the state of democracy, etc., etc.? So while some argue Belgrade should be recognized for implementing recommendations from the Venice Commission, the Venice Commission is a body of the Council of Europe, which has nothing to do with the EU. It's a separate organization, but the Venice Commission is like a body of the Council of Europe that is giving recommendations on the rule of law, constitutional law, etc., etc., basically to check, okay, what you're doing compatible with a democratic state. And so they make recommendations on these sort of things. And so the question, okay, did Serbia implement reforms that fulfill what the Venice Commission was saying they should do? Some want to use the carrot, others say repealing the reforms does little to reverse years of democratic backsliding and persistent concerns over judicial independence, corruption, and the rule of law. The Venice Commission is the Council of Europe's advisory body on constitutional matters. And to give you another example of what they do, the Venice Commission these days is also, again, in Hungary, to check what the new government of Peter Magyar is doing when it comes to their attempt to fire the president. You have a president the president of Hungary is close to Orban, and Peter Magyar had said that if he was elected, he was going to kick him out. since the president doesn't want to leave, Peter Magyar proposed an amendment to the constitution, or constitutional amendment. I think it's a constitutional amendment. Basically, they changed the law so that the guy could be fired. And so the Venice Commission is looking at what Hungary is doing. So, okay, is it okay for Peter Magyar to use his supermajority to basically fire people who are not politically aligned with him in the Hungarian state? Again, it took me a second. I was like, but why is he talking about Czech Republic? And I was like, oh, damn it. I'll give it to you. I'll grant it. I grant this one. Don't abuse it. Where was I? So for many in Brussels, the debate extends beyond a single negotiation cluster. Serbia remains the Western Balkan largest economy and a strategically important partner, leading officials to argue that continued engagement offers the best chance of encouraging further reform. Other counters that rewarding incremental progress before more fundamental changes are delivered risk undermining the credibility of the EU enlargement process. So basically, okay, carrot or stick, is the carrot worth given the small changes that are being done? Or are we just being run around as fools? No, I agree. It's a classic joke on country's name. Alors, how do you manage the interim time between an adhesion and the ability of the new member state to send representatives to EEP? Usually they send observers. So you have so for instance, when Croatia joined the EU back in 2013, the elections, so they joined the EU in 2013. So from 2013, they were members of the EU, but the elections were only in 2014. So the year after. And so in the meantime, what happened is that the parliament had Croatia send a number of parliamentarians as observers. So they would attend the parliament activities. They would not have a vote. They would not have like an official status, but it's kind of, okay, come here. And that way you kind of get used to how things work. You will meet your colleagues, etc. Meet the political groups, etc. So you kind of ease the process for them to join. And then in 2014, Croatia had its European elections like everyone, and so they elected the MEPs, who then became MEPs as everyone else. So it's something like if you don't have like if you have a gap between the adhesion and the European elections, you have the possibility to send observers. The question is, in the case of Croatia, it was possible because there was just 1 year between the adhesion and the elections. What would happen the other way around? The elections are in 2029. But a new country is joining in 2030. There, I'm not sure what would happen. My guess is that probably would be dealt with in the treaties. They would probably find a solution. Probably the treaty would say, okay, you will get your allocation of MEPs, and you will probably have, you may have elections to fill that gap, to feel that all member states will be asked to send a delegation of MPs. I don't exactly know, but I'm sure it would be negotiated and figured out as part of the adhesion treaty. Are observers paid as an MEP? Good question. I don't think so. I don't think so because they are not MEPs. They are observers, but I don't think they are paid as MEPs. Maybe like they will get like the parliament will participate to some things, like they may take part of the cost of them coming to Brussels or something like that. But I don't think they are paid as MEPs because There are not MEPs. We need to look, but I don't like. It would be odd for people to be paid and have the state, despite not having the status of MP. But to be double checked, but I don't think so. Especially if the period of time is relatively short. All right, where was I? Yeah. So the debate has taken on added significance following President Alexander Vučić's announcement that he intends to resign after 8 years in office and call elections within the next 3 to 4 months, with his objective becoming Prime Minister. While supporters have portrayed the move as the start of a new political chapter, critics argue that it is a tactical maneuver that could allow him to retain power by seeking the premiership. The Commission stressed, however, that any decision ultimately rests with EU governments. The decision to move forward with Serbia's accession process remains in the hand of the Council, the spokesperson added. It is expected the matter will be raised at a meeting among ambassadors in Brussels on Wednesday. The latest debate was triggered after Belgrade repealed a package of controversial judiciary laws enacted in February and collectively referred as the Mardic, I will go with Mardic, the Mardic laws. It followed sharp criticism from the Venice Commission. The reversal was welcomed by the European Enlargement Commissioner, Martakos, who described it as an important step in the right direction and said discussions were continuing on Serbia's wider reform agenda. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has also said Serbia could advance further in its accession negotiation if it delivers on reforms, while European Council President Antonio Costa recently suggested alignment with the Venice Commission's recommendation could help move the process forward. Behind those public statements lies a more nuanced debate. Several EU officials argue that maintaining dialogue with Belgrade is strategically important despite Serbia's democratic shortcomings and its refusal to align with EU sanctions against Russia. Serbia is notoriously very close to Russia. From the Commission's perspective, this engagement risks weakening the EU's influence in the Western Balkans and alienating a country regarded as central to regional stability. So basically the question is, okay, even if Serbia is problematic, we should kind of keep them close, because otherwise they will say, well, fine, we're going to see Uncle Vladimir and Uncle Xi Jinping. And so open a way right in the middle of Europe for even more increased Russian and Chinese influence. So there, it's more like a geopolitical and strategic kind of concern. Okay, how do we prevent them from running to Russia, running to China? From the Commission's perspective, I just read that. That approach, however, is far from universally shared. In response to questions from Euronews, a Commission spokesperson confirmed that the executive had shared an information note with member states explaining why it believes Serbia's recent steps could justify opening Cluster 3. For some diplomats, recognizing Serbia's latest reforms would reinforce the principle that candidate countries are rewarded when they implement recommendations made by Brussels and the Venice Commission. You do good, you get a carrot. One EU diplomat argued that failing to acknowledge tangible progress risks turning Serbia into the next North Macedonia, a country that secured EU candidate status in 2005 but has repeatedly seen its accession ambition frustrated despite undertaking reforms. So typically, like North Macedonia, they did reforms. They even changed the name of their country to sort out a conflict they had with Greece, and nonetheless, their process is kind of stuck, which creates a lot of frustration within the country because they are like, okay, in the end, do you want us or do you not want us? And we see a movement within these countries where the population is less and less supportive of joining the EU. So you're kind of losing the population on joining the EU. which is obviously not the trend that you want to see. So it's also a question of, okay, how do we not lose the region? How to blame them? Yeah. And the problem also there is that you have like a especially in this region, like you have regional rivalries. Like okay, Macedonia, you had the rivalry with Greece. Because Greece was saying, oh, you can't call yourself Macedonia because Macedonia is Greek. It's Alexander the Great and it's ours, it's not yours. So stop using the word Macedonia. Ultimately, they decided to change the name of the country. So they renamed themselves North Macedonia to chill things with Greece and also act as to improve the situation for the EU candidacy, because again, Greece has a veto of membership. But you have other examples. Let's say that you have which one could I use as an example? Montenegro. Wait, is it Montenegro? I don't want to say bullshit. Yeah, okay. So it's indeed with Montenegro. Like Montenegro, country that is very advanced and very likely to be the next country to join the EU, was kind of taken hostage by Bulgaria. Why? Because Bulgaria was not happy of the way Montenegro was writing some words. Because they said, Montenegro is using a language that is actually Bulgarian, and so they are infringing on our cultural rights. And so we want Montenegro to stop doing these sort of things. Montenegro sorted out that problem, but you know, since you need unanimity for enlargement, that's the moment where if you have regional rivalries, well, the one that is inside the EU will milk that veto to obtain everything that they want from the country that wants to join. Which of course slows down the process, is frustrating for the other because like all the other like, why are you like breaking our balls with like the orthograph in Cyrillic of some words? Like just move the fuck on. But they have a veto. And in the case of Serbia, I mean, you have Serbia. It's even more complicated because they have all the background of the the Balkan Wars with the breakout of Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. So you have all the countries that used to be part of Yugoslavia and the kind of civil war and genocide that happened there. Of course, that makes conversation a bit complicated. Running out of water on the first glass. I was in Serbia a few weeks ago. There is Putin propaganda everywhere. Yeah, but Serbia is very close to Russia. Like that's one of the big problems they have with the EU because they are very much friends with Russia. Even the population is very much pro-Russian. So it is like indeed a problem. You mean as French could do the same thing with Belgians? I mean, indeed, you could argue that it's another failing of the Fourth Republic. The Fourth Republic failed to protect the French culture by failing to demand that Belgium counts right. Says 70 instead of 70. We had an opportunity to make things right. And once again, the Fourth Republic failed us. The general will not have allowed that. Let me tell you this. That would not have happened with the general. Charles au secours. Sorry. Franco-French jokes. Apologies for the non-French in the chat would be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Serbians see Russians as their big brother, but the government is more nuanced. The way they're supporting. Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, there is like a often like in the iconography, Russia is presented as the big bear and Serbia as the small bear. So there's definitely like a very strong links between the two. But Serbia has been walking the line. Has been walking the line between not outright saying, okay, Putin was right to invade Ukraine, but not taking on the sanctions of the EU against Russia. So they're kind of trying to play both sides. Since Belgium is a founding member, France could not block us on language issue. Well, they could have refused to sign the treaty. They said, no, there's no way I'm agreeing. I mean, since the EU was created on the basis of a Franco-German initiative, I mean, of course, with the support of Benelux and Serbia, they could have said, no, we will not allow Belgium inside the cool kids club as long as they don't sort this language thing. Not acceptable. We will take, like the Netherlands will take Luxembourg, but I'm sorry, no, we will not accept Belgium as the leaders on the initiative. And so who are you choosing, Germany? Are you choosing France or are you choosing Belgium? Well, but you're going to choose us. So Belgium, fix your numbers and then come back. "25 years ago, Serbia was supported by Russia against European countries, trying to oust President Milosevic. Is there a kind of historical grudge?" Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Serbians have not forgotten the intervention of most of NATO. Actually, it's less the Europeans than NATO. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why Serbians are not like the most hype about joining the EU, because, well, they remember that when Yugoslavia was, which was built around Serbia, when Yugoslavia was collapsing, the Europeans were not exactly on the side of Serbia. So there's definitely historical grudges and all that, but it's also part of the discussion in the sense that in the process for adhesion of the Balkan countries, so Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, etc., you have special rules. Like you have like the normal rules for adhesion. So you have the economic, democratic, legal rules, etc. These countries have special additional obligations to address the recent history, to address the issue that we had the Balkan Wars. Like 35 years ago, people were actively genociding each other in that region. That tends to leave some marks. And so, in addition to the normal conditions of adhesion, the Balkan countries have an obligation of good neighborhood relations, in the sense that you can only join the EU if you maintain good relations with your neighbors. We don't want you to keep fighting with Bosnia. We don't want you to keep fighting with with Albania, etc., because of everything. Like sort of forcing them to do what France and Germany did to sort out their historical grudge. Yes, you killed each other in a war. It was terrible. Now get over it. Reconciliation, and then you can move on and join together in the EU. So you have like special rules for the Balkan countries because of that background. And so that's another thing that is playing against Serbia, because their requirement is also to sort out their relation with Kosovo. And of course, that is not making a lot of progress there. So that's part of the special set of rules that applies specifically because of the Balkan Wars. France is a small country stuck between Belgium and Brittany. Ah, revoilà les régionalistes. Alright, let's continue. Where was I? Blah blah blah, I read that. Did I read that? Yes, I read that. Okay, so others were unconvinced. Several diplomats told Euronews that while repealing the judiciary laws was welcome, it does not resolve broader concerns surrounding the rule of law, democratic institutions, and judicial independence. One diplomat said the repeal merely brought Serbia back to square one, while another argued that reforms under Cluster 1, which covers the fundamental of the accession, so the rule of law, fighting corruption, etc., so basically the fact that you're a democracy, arguably something that is important, so that these reforms on Cluster 1 remain the real test of whether Belgrade is ready to make meaningful progress. The debate illustrates the central dilemma now facing Brussels. Whether incremental reform should be rewarded as a way of keeping Serbia anchored to the European Union, or whether doing so risks sending the wrong signal about the standard expected of candidate countries. Several diplomats said discussions around Cluster 3 cannot be separated from concerns over Cluster 1, the chapter covering the fundamentals of the accession process, including the rule of law, judicial independence, and democratic institutions. I'm trying to remember what is in Cluster 3. Cluster 3 EU negotiations. It's economy. So competitiveness and inclusive growth. So okay, that's the economic chapters. Several diplomats pointed to a confidential commission assessment circulated among member states in early 2025, describing it as one of the most critical evaluations of Serbia's progress in recent years. One diplomat characterized it as the worst enlargement assessment they had seen, while another described it simply as damning. Their argument is straightforward. Serbia cannot credibly move forward on economic chapters if it continues to struggle with the fundamentals that underpin the accession process. Why? Because if you have a country that is corrupted, where you don't have independence of the judiciary, well then, trying to build a market, it's kind of fucked, because you won't have fair competition, because if corruption can mean that, well, you get access to, you win that market or that market, etc., that kind of prevents the fair market that is supposed to exist within the EU from emerging. You need to have your democracy sorted out to create the conditions for a fair market and working economy to function. Okay. The repeal of the laws is welcome, one diplomat said. But it doesn't mean Serbia is suddenly ready to move ahead. It simply brings back the country back to where it was before. So you just have a reset. It's not actual progress, it's just a reset. Others, however, see the latest development differently. Two diplomats argued that Belgrade's decision to reverse the judiciary reforms demonstrated that the government was willing to respond to recommendations from Brussels and the Venice Commission, precisely the kind of behavior the enlargement process is designed to encourage. So they respond to remarks from outside organizations telling them, okay, sort out your shit. That disagreement reflects a broader question confronting the EU. Whether candidate countries should be rewarded for incremental progress even when deeper structural concerns remain unresolved. A leaked version of the Commission assessment, seen by Euronews, highlights persisting shortcomings in judicial independence following the adoption of the January legislation. It states that Serbia should implement the Venice Commission's recommendations by repealing or substantially amending the legislation without delay, a step Belgrade has since taken. But the document also identifies a broader pattern of concerns that extends well beyond the judiciary. It points to shortcomings in democratic governance and references the wave of anti-government protests that followed the collapse of a railway station canopy in Novi Sad in November 2024, which killed 16 people. And since that collapse, so the roof of a recent train station collapsed, killing people. Why? Because it was badly done, because of corruption, etc., etc. And so since then, you had massive demonstration, you had permanent camps led by students, but not only, that are meeting on a permanently, asking basically the government to fuck off and to make reforms and fight the corruption, etc. And so you have since then you have a consistent tensions between the Serbian government and these demonstrators in Novi Sad, and it became kind of the symbol of the democratic problems of Serbia, because also there are clashes with the protesters, refusal of the government to address the concerns, etc., etc. So the report notes that the safety of demonstrators was not always guaranteed and cites several violent incidents during the protests. It also raises concerns over the pace of investigations into the disaster, saying corruption inquiry had been hampered by a lack of police cooperation. Bye Tenval, see you Friday, hopefully. The collapse and the lack of progress in the investigation continued to fuel a perceived lack of accountability and transparency in government infrastructure and construction projects, the document states. The findings broadly mirror the Commission's 2025 enlargement report, which concluded... Sorry, I have to sneeze. It's annoying when... Okay, it's coming. No, it's going away. I hate when it does that. Sorry. It's gonna be annoying. So which concludes Serbia had only made limited progress in key areas, including the rule of law, anti-corruption efforts, and reducing state interference in the economy. Yet, even among member states, there is no single view of how those findings should shape the accession process. One diplomat from a major EU country said they had observed positive development in Serbia in recent weeks, while another indicated they would have assessed positively any recommendations from the Commission to move forward with Cluster 3. Others remain considerably more cautious, arguing that Serbia has yet to demonstrate sustained progress on the reforms that lie at the heart of the accession process. Vucic's announcement that he intends to step down has added another layer of uncertainty to an already delicate debate in Brussels. Let me just change my page there. Oh, there we go. The 56 years old, who has dominated Serbian politics for more than a decade, said he would resign after serving 2 presidential terms. He has yet to decide whether he will seek the premiership, but has insisted any decision will be made transparently. For EU officials, the announcement is significant, but not necessarily transformative. The proper functioning of democratic institutions is at the core of Serbia's EU accession process, a Commission spokesperson told Euronews, adding that Brussels would closely monitor any future elections to ensure they are free and fair. Experts, however, caution against interpreting Vucic's announcement as evidence of a broader democratic opening. There is no concrete timeline, no dissolution of parliament, and most importantly, no guarantees for free and fair elections. Antigona Imeri, a Western Balkan expert at the Center for European Policy Studies, argued the resignation should instead be viewed as a tactical political maneuver. It should set off alarm bells, she said, arguing the move could ultimately consolidate rather than diminish Vucic's influence. One European diplomat broadly agreed with that assessment, saying that there was little expectations in Brussels that Serbia's political trajectory would fundamentally change simply because Vucic vacates the presidency. Berta Lopez Domenech, a policy analyst at the European Policy Center, believes the announcement reflects constitutional reality as much as political strategy. Having reached the 2-term presidential limit, okay, I was wondering that if there was like a hard cap on the number of times you can be president. There is, you can't be president more than 2 times. So having reached the 2-term presidential limit, Vučić may instead seek the office of prime minister, allowing him to retain political control while presenting himself as responding to public demands following months of anti-government protests. He presents himself as someone who listens to the people, she said. But he could no longer run for president. Becoming prime minister would allow him to keep his grip on power. Lopez Domenech argues that the apparent contradiction extends beyond Serbia's domestic politics. When you look at the rhetoric he's still using domestically, it's still belligerent towards the EU and friendly towards Russia, she said. The overall position has not changed. For Slovenian MEP Vladimir Prebilic, who sits on the European Parliament's delegation for relations with Serbia, the announcement alone offers few guarantees that democratic standards will improve. I just have a notification. Let me just remove it. Hopla. Goodbye. Where was I? There is no concrete timeline, no dissolution of the parliament, and most importantly, no guarantees for free and fair elections, he said. The cosmetic change in the current political constellation won't change anything when it comes to Serbia's EU path, which has been effectively frozen since 2021. Instead, he argued, Brussels should focus less on political announcements and more on the conditions under which future elections are held. What Serbia instead needs from Europe is a clear and unequivocal signal that free and fair elections are needed now and to stand unconditionally alongside Serbian citizens and the democratic movement, which could be criticized as being like a sort of interference because the EU would be taking sides. Serbia's democratic trajectory is only one part of the equation confronting EU capitals. The country's refusal to align with EU sanctions against Russia, its close political relationship with Moscow, and its expanding ties with China continue to complicate accession talks. Croatian MEP Tonino Picula, the European Parliament's rapporteur for Serbia, recently warned that while countries such as Montenegro, if you have something interesting to contribute, you'll contribute later. Where was I? I don't remember where I was. Shit, I lost track. Recently warned that while countries such as Montenegro and Albania have accelerated reforms, Serbia has experienced a steady erosion of political rights and civil liberties, alongside a weakening of democratic institutions. He also pointed to Belgrade's limited alignment with the EU's foreign and security policy as an increasingly important concern for member states. Vučić has maintained close ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin throughout Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has publicly criticized this relationship, questioning why European leaders would choose to stand alongside Putin while Russia continues its war against Ukraine. For Serbian officials, however, Brussels has not always applied the same standard to every candidate country. Former Prime Minister Ana Brnabić recently told Euronews that Serbia faced double standards, pointing to electoral reforms recommendations made by the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. If you look at other candidate countries which also have ODIHR recommendations, so this Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights body, on improving electoral conditions, they are not required to implement even one of them, and they have already opened all their clusters, she said. So yeah, you are unfair to us, you're not following, you're not giving us the same rules as others. One could argue that also the state of Serbia is not the same as other countries. We are not giving up, we will keep fighting, we will work even harder, but it is important that we present not only plans, but also results. Any questions on that? Up. We have another one like to show the results. Like the Commission and Parliament is the Commission Parliament. The Commission and a couple of member states are pushing for this. We'll see the results in the next article. Spoiler, that did not go well. My thing moving. There we go. So, in the end, 8 member states opposed the opening of Serbia's next EU accession cluster. Bear in mind that each of them has a veto. Had a veto, actually. In a major blow to Belgrade's bid to join the European Union, EU ambassadors who gathered in Brussels on Wednesday failed to find unanimity on Serbia's path towards joining the bloc. 8 out of the 27 member states opposed opening another round of accession talks with Serbia at a meeting attended by European Union ambassadors in Brussels on Wednesday, 3 EU diplomats confirmed to Euronews. The member states that opposed the opening of Cluster 3, which centers on competitiveness and inclusive growth, so the economic chapters, were the Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Estonia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, and Croatia. The 3 member states that remain less opposed but not convinced are Denmark, Luxembourg, and Latvia, while the general supporters of Serbian accession include power broker France. And I think Germany was also in favor. French President Emmanuel Macron previously stated that the bloc requires a strong and democratic Serbia by its side. Supportive states are concerned about the risk of further alienating the Western Balkan countries and not rewarding it for attempted reforms. So again, the balance are you're doing reforms, you don't get anything in return, or we do reforms, but you don't care about us. Well, fine, we'll go the other way. Serbia formally applied for EU membership in 2009 and was granted official EU candidate status in 2012. 22 chapters have been opened during this time and 2 have been provisionally closed. Unanimous support from the EU 27 member states is required to open and close any negotiating cluster, which are thematic groupings of laws and policy area. Serbia's former Prime Minister Ana Brnabić, that's literally what we just read. Also, the fact that she believes there is double standards applied to Serbia. A European Commission spokesperson told Euronews on Monday that a document explaining why the EU executive believes recent steps taken by the Serbian authority justifies the opening of Cluster 3 and had been shared with EU countries that day. So Serbia has implemented substantial elements of the commitment in May to address member states' concerns, including repealing controversial amendments to judicial laws alongside progress on media freedom, the electoral framework, and cooperation with the EU on foreign and security policy, according to the document. While Serbia has yet to align with EU sanctions against Russia over its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Commission noted that Belgrade has cooperated with the bloc to counter sanction circumvention, provided, so basically the fact that you forbid, for instance, Russia from sending stuff to Russia, and countries are circumventing that, for instance, by sending goods to a third state, for instance Serbia, and then Serbia sells them back to Russia. So Serbia has been helpful in fighting the circumvention of the EU sanctions. So they supported there. They provided substantial support to Ukraine and intensified high-level political contact with Kiev. The document also acknowledged that Serbia's work is far from complete, stating that further work is still required on judicial reform and the prosecutorial system. The meeting on Wednesday was convened to see whether this assessment is shared by capitals. One EU diplomat speaking to Euronews stated that the general position by the 8th was centered on Serbia's problematic rule of law issues and non-alignment with sanctions. Another said several member states agree with the Commission's positive endorsement, stating that Serbia has met or is on track to meet the criteria to move forward with Cluster 3. Various senior EU officials have publicly endorsed opening Cluster 3. Sorry, the brain is starting to melt with the heat. particularly after Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić reversed controversial judicial amendments in June after the Venice Commission recommended changes. The European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, is among one of the most senior supporters. In light of the recent some positive developments, the Commission renewed its recommendations to the Council to open Cluster 3 in the accession negotiation with Serbia, Kos said on Tuesday during a debate regarding Serbian accession at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. The Commission will also continue to incentivize further reforms progress for the benefit of all Serbian citizens and the whole Serbian society. Also on Wednesday, members of the European Parliament in Strasbourg voted overwhelmingly in support of Serbia's 2025 enlargement report, with 468 votes in favor, 116 against, and 79 abstention. So basically, the Parliament is giving its opinion on the state of the candidacy of Serbia. The Commission's report included recommendations to reform the conduct of elections, strengthening the judiciary, and stamping out corruption. It also reiterates it's not the Commission's report, it's the Parliament's report. It also reiterates that Cluster 3 is technically ready to be opened. Croatian MEP Tonino Picula, I think it's rather say, SND, Socialist, the report's rapporteur, so the main negotiator, said in a press conference following the vote that the situation in the country has been deteriorating over the past few years. Reforms have halted and the pace has slowed, he said. While the European Union is experiencing renewed momentum for enlargement with neighboring Montenegro and Albania advancing their accession negotiations, so like I said, like Montenegro is likely to be the next country to join the EU, probably by 2030. Albania is also fairly advanced, even if not there yet. So both of them are advancing in their accession negotiation. Serbia EU-related reforms have largely stalled in several key areas, most notably in the rule of law and democratic standards, he said. Asked by a reporter why the Parliament's opinion diverged from the Commission's recommendation to open Cluster 3, Pizzula said he was intrigued. We based our own report on the many assessment and all points derived from that Commission's report. So for us, it's unclear where does the Commission see progress, he responded. After the report was published late last year, Vučić defended his country's goodwill to carry out the reforms. We have to consider all the remarks, all the demands from the European Union, Vučić said at the time, adding, Serbia is very much committed to its EU path and will take it in a very serious and responsible way. Any questions on Serbia before we move to our final topic and final article of today? What time is it? Oh, we're kind of speed running today. I'm not gonna complain. I had an early start and also like it's kind of warm. Could they ask to stay outside Schengen area and or the Eurozone to accelerate? Well, how can I say it? Schengen and the Eurozone are separate matter to the accession. Like, join the EU does not mean that you are automatically a member of Schengen and automatically a member of the Eurozone. They are kind of separate package. You have, as far as the EU is concerned, like the principle is that any country that's joined the EU is supposed to, at some point, when it is ready, to join the Euro. But it doesn't have to be day one. I don't think it's ever day one of them joining the EU. It's always sometime after. So, and also like it's considered like some countries that negotiated an opt-out. So meaning at the time of negotiating their adhesion to the EU, no, actually not in this case, it doesn't work. At the time of when the euro was negotiated, they negotiated that it would not cover them. So it was the UK, it was Denmark. So they had an opt-out, so no requirement for them to join the euro at any point. For all the other, technically, they are supposed at some point to join the euro. That's supposed to be the ultimate objective when they are ready. So Serbia will have to make the outright demand. Oh yes, we do not want to join the eurozone. I don't think it would do anything to accelerate the process, because in any case, well, they have to do all the other economic reforms to be able to join the single market. As for Schengen, it's separate sort of standards. So it takes years for countries to join the Schengen area even after joining the EU. Like Bulgaria is the latest to have joined the Schengen area. They've been members of the EU since 2004. So it can take a while before they can join Schengen. So it's not something that could accelerate their adhesion process. Like it's really about the fundamentals. Like you have to see Schengen and the Eurozone as a added layer on the core package that is being part of the EU. And what they are doing right now is negotiating to join the base package, EU. If they want to join Schengen and the Euro, it's a separate process. It's layers on top. But you still need to have like the basics. And for now, like they're struggling on the basics. As a reminder, like to join the EU, you sort of have 3 conditions once the negotiations have started. Condition number 1, you need to be a democracy. Rule of law, fair election, etc. What is covered in Cluster 1. Second condition, you have economy. You need to have an economy that is solid enough to bear the pressure of being part of the EU, of the single market. Because when you join the EU, so you're part of the single market, great, you can send your products freely all around the EU. But that also means that products from other countries in the EU can come freely in your country. And so you need to have an economy that is solid enough to sustain that pressure. And also in terms of model, it's a social economy of market is the economic model of the EU. So that's the second condition, economic. And the third one is legal. You basically need to catch up on all the laws that have been taken by the EU until now. So that the day you join the EU, well, you're compliant with all European law. And that's what is taking the longest time because, well, you need to change your laws one by one, see, okay, is it compatible, not compatible with EU law, change those laws, see if the Commission and Member States are happy with those changes, and then you can move on. So that's what is taking a lot of time, because you have to catch up on the 70-year plus of EU legislation. All right, no more questions? Don't see anything. Let's roll then. Tack. All right, final topic. Simplification. So, we have discussed it in the past. Since the glasses are dirty. There we go. Since the 2024 elections and the new European Commission, there is a new priority, like one of the core economic motto of the EU and the Commission is simplification. We need to simplify EU laws so that our industry can progress and support the economy. That's been the mantra. We need to simplify EU law. In practice, this was used as an excuse to do some level of deregulation. So we had adopted recently a number of green laws. Simplification is a way to, through simplification, de facto deregulate. So undo part of the thing you had just adopted. Which is why, like, notably, NGOs are extremely critical of the simplification drive because they're saying, okay, you're undoing everything that we have done to protect the environment. in order to support the industry and businesses. And businesses on their side are very much demanding simplification. Say, yeah, of course, you want to remove EU laws, fine, you go ahead. Like, cut the red tape, make our life easier, because then that means like it's less costly for us to operate. And they've been very, very demanding of this and supportive of this simplification agenda that is pursued by the Commission and the member states. Except that now, 2 years down the line, they're like, is that actually such a good idea the way it's being done? Not certain. So, Europe's industries demanded a bonfire of red tape, now they hate it. Businesses say the bloc's simplification push is drowning in the inertia of Brussels bureaucracy. The European Union thought it was making life easier for businesses when it announced plans to slash EU bureaucracy. But 20 months into its red tape slashing bonanza, many businesses are simply not impressed. Politico spoke to 17 companies, consultancies, and industry associations across sectors who expressed discontent over how the EU is going about its simplification drive. They say it's too slow, expensive, and complicated, and question whether an institution set up to write laws can effectively undo them. Like, a body that is meant to write law, it's not the natural state to undo law. The EU is hardwired to create new rules, but is far less capable of removing the obstacles that hinder industrial competitiveness. Competitiveness being like the other magic word of this mandate. Said Richard Longden, head of group communications at the chemical manufacturer Ineos, a sentiment echoed by several other interviewees. The disillusion is a far cry from November 2024, when Ursula von der Leyen, when Ursula von der Leyen stood before the European Parliament to announce a new dawn for the EU, cheered on by industry. We need to streamline our rule to reduce the burden on businesses, and we need to give legal certainty about what we expect from them. The European Commission President told the MEPs at the time in a direct response to industry's unified calls for lighter touch regulation in Antwerp the previous February. Sorry for swearing earlier, do you know it was banned? It's not that swearing is banned, per se, I mean, keep it on the down low. It's mostly that you were completely out of topic. So that's why I made a small slap on the wrist, but welcome back. As long as you're staying on topic and not go engage in fair discussion, etc., fine. I'm not it's not a swear-free chat. Of course, keep it under control and be nice with everyone. Where was I? Yeah, okay. So Commission converted to the need of simplification. You saw it on, yeah, because the title was listing all the topics, and the part on the Sesame we had already discussed. It was the first topic we discussed on the stream. So actually, when you arrived, we had finished with that part of the discussion. So you were in topic, but too late. No problem. All right. Where was I? Okay. Over the following months, the Commission produced a steady stream of policy proposals designed to simplify the EU rulebook and free up Europe's sluggish economy so it could compete with the industrial powerhouses of China and the US. Because, while the previous mandate was all about environment, the Green Deal, this mandate is all about the economy. Competitiveness, strategic autonomy, etc. So you assist a parliamentarian. I used to, not anymore. I was in the parliament as an MP assistant for 6 years and a half, so quite some time, but not anymore. Now I'm a lobbyist, so I've been out of the parliament since 6 years, since 2019. But I'm still in Brussels, still very much active in EU bubble thing, etc., etc. But like, I created my MP assistant back when I was an assistant. Interesting profession. Yeah, very interesting indeed. Where was I? Yeah, so the focus on this mandate is all about economy, industry, therefore simplification / deregulation. But now companies say that the bonfire of red tape they ask for is weak, costly, confusing, and at times misguided. That criticism, justified or not, shows Europe's industry are increasingly frustrated with the Brussels way of doing things, writing new laws to undo other laws. Lobbyists have a much more nuanced jobs than people put. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. People see, unfortunately, lobbying as a synonym for corruption. It's not the case, obviously, and lobbying is actually much wider and, I would argue, I mean, I'm not the only one arguing that, but necessary for democracy. But indeed, yes, lobbying has a bad rap for good and bad reasons. I would say mostly bad reasons, but well. I'm sorry, like I'm again woke up at 5, so the brain is melting a bit earlier than usual today. Usually I'm at the stage where usually I am at like almost 3 hours of stream. Like I'm an hour earlier in my meltdown, in my intellectual meltdown. But I will power through it. Eat some croissant. Ironically, I do have a croissant. Like I brought back from Paris a croissant, so I do have. I will actually eat a croissant after the stream. Actually, like I know it's like it's the most stereotypical French thing, but like, and normally I don't have. I don't have that in the. I don't have that in my flat, but I was in Paris this morning, so yeah, I bought a croissant on the way back. I confess, so yeah, I have. Nah, it's fine. Like it's fine. There, it's made in good humor, so it's fine. As long as you don't go into actual like racist tropes and stuff like that, that's fine. There, it's good fun. Okay. The sense of urgency is present in the Berlaymont, but too many policymakers in the corridors of the Commission departments, in the European Parliament, and in national ministries still believe we can regulate Europe into competitiveness, said Peter Lockbiller, the global head of public affairs at Booking Holdings, which owns Booking.com. For years, European businesses have complained that EU rules are choking them because they waste time filling out paperwork to comply instead of doing business, making money, and creating jobs. Emboldened by Mario Draghi's landmark instructions on how to revive the European economy, so Mario Draghi, back in 2024, was tasked by von der Leyen to write a report on EU competitiveness, and that report of Mario Draghi has become kind of the Bible of the EU institution on, okay, for the economy, this is what we need to do, to an extent. I don't like Brexit, but looking at the state of the EU now, I don't know about joining back. I take it that you're Brit, then. Well, I mean, I don't know about the EU letting you join back right now. That works both sides. I think that at some point it might happen. Like, not now, but I mean, the discourse in the UK also need to evolve on that front. But I think that first the UK needs to be ready for that conversation. Give it a decade or so. And then the EU needs to be up for that conversation as well. So, yeah, I would say that conversation about that may start like 10, 15 years. and then you have to go through the entire thing. But yeah, it's not. That's like in my opinion, it would take a generation. We need a couple of yeah. There's a bit. There's going to be a bit of that. Yeah. But yeah, I would say a generation, like 20 to 25 years before the UK rejoins if they want to do that, and the EU is okay with that. In the meantime, well, we make do. So yeah, emboldened by his report, they asked Brussels to follow his advice and lighten the regulatory law to help them compete with US and Chinese rivals, especially since we are going into a huge geostrategic, geoeconomic competition with the US and China being increasingly aggressive on the global markets. Unless AfD and Le Pen win. Well, I mean, you don't necessarily need AfD and Le Pen to win to limit the prospects of the UK joining the EU. Others may also have a thing or two to say about that. And even like France, even without Le Pen, they will be a pain in the ass. We will be a pain in the ass when it comes to the UK potentially joining back the EU. We will be the bad cop in the room. Make no mistake about that. Like Le Pen or no Le Pen. And even by then, Le Pen would be gone because again, like a generation discussion. Shit, I keep losing myself in my own article. Oh, not my own, in the article I'm reading. Shit. Okay. Since February 2025, the Commission has been doing just that. It came up with a dozen proposals to slash red tape in areas such of EU laws such as defense, energy, chemicals, tech, and agriculture. Although they recognize the efforts made by Brussels to shift its focus to competitiveness, companies say they are not yet benefiting from those solutions because it takes months, if not years, for decisions taken in Brussels to materialize across the EU economy. Which makes sense, it's not because you're making a law that suddenly things happen in real life. You have to digest the law and then implement it. So it takes indeed years. I very much believe that they have the small and medium-sized enterprise in mind, but the way they are tackling the problem is not really helping, said Till Blasinger, who owns the German engineering SME Blasinger Group. Do I feel an easing of the regulatory burden? No, he said, though he added the Commission was going in the right direction with its simplification drive. EU decision makers, meanwhile, are desperate to find the balance between industry calls for fewer rules and repeated warnings from scientists and civil society that the simplification drive will harm European citizen health and the environment on which the EU economy and food system relies. What regulations are they talking about though? Oh, that's fairly large. The simplification is on so many laws. A lot of environmental laws, typically reporting obligations that companies must do, on their carbon emissions. What else did you have? You had a simplification of the AI regulation, or rather an attempt to simplify them, and other tech regulations. Or you had discussion on simplification of agricultural rules, chemical rules. So it's many different rules that they are trying to simplify. And as you said, so mentioning health, the political debate there is what some call simplification, others call deregulation. Companies will tell you, yes, these rules are complicated because I have to do 50,000 reporting, I have to follow rules that my competitors in the US and China don't have to follow, so I'm at a disadvantage, etc. So you need to get rid of that because otherwise I can't compete. Others will tell you, well, actually these rules are there to protect the health, to protect the environment, and so if you remove them, well, you put at risk consumers, you put at risk the environment, and ultimately, in the long run, it's negative for the companies as well. So some people call it simplification, some people call it deregulation. It's up to everyone to make their own assessment on what is what. I tell you quality of life for the average citizen. I mean, yeah. That being said, I mean, when we're talking about simplification, they're not like, even if there is not a strong argument to say that it's actual deregulation. I mean, there is very strong argument to say that it is actual deregulation. That being said, it's not full deregulation. Like, they're not like throwing out the window rules that actually like would put us at the level of Chinese or Americans. Globally, even after this deregulation drive, the EU remains like kind of top tier when it comes to health regulation and stuff like that. Globally, we're not gonna end up with Chinese standards. That's not the goal. But still, it remains some level of deregulation. Something is different. Yeah, but that's the debate. You have indeed an economic issue. The European economy is sluggish. That is a fact. That is like that's an actual fact that economically we're not doing good for many different reasons, and that we are facing hard competition internationally. The installation was a bad policy idea. Yes. I mean, I want to say yes and no, because there was this belief that indeed we were going to move collectively to a tertiary economy. So yes, okay, we don't need industry anymore because we're going to go into like this tertiary style economy based on services, like the things that are like industrial jobs will be done elsewhere because it's less costly, etc., etc. Globalization and all that. Now it's coming back to bite us in the ass to an extent, because not everyone can necessarily do jobs in a tertiary economy. You still have people who, like when you have a factory that is closing, where those people they don't find a new job like this, and it has an impact like on certain regions, etc., etc., etc. But also. So, and that's something that we could not, like the second part is not something that we could anticipate. Part of this deindustrialization created vulnerabilities for us, like dependencies, that are now being used actively by countries that are not so friendly to us. And so part of the agenda now behind simplification, but also reindustrialization to an extent, is to not only like relaunch the European economy, but also fight back, reduce the dependencies that the Europeans have built over the years, like being less dependent on Chinese, being less dependent on the Americans on some stuff, etc., etc. So that's part of the discussions today. The Chinese trade policy, of course. Merkel's policy with denuclearization really set back energy independence. I mean, there are many things to be said about that. There is the stance about nuclear energy. So there are some people are in favor of nuclear energy, some are not in favor. So to each their own. However, beyond the issue of nuclear energy, you have the issue that the Germans, even prior to Merkel, even if Merkel intensified that, they built dependencies, notably with Russian gas, which obviously came back to haunt us collectively in 2022 after the invasion of Ukraine, and even before to an extent, because Putin was using that as leverage against us. So the decision to remove nuclear energy in Germany, it's a national decision, so it's, to an extent, you could say that's the problem of the Germans. The French remain free, anyone remains free to use nuclear energy if they want, so Germans at that time made the decision to not rely anymore on nuclear energy. That's their problem. Its problem is that A, it intensified some other energy dependencies, Russian gas, for instance, not only, but also, like, in general, you have other kind of dependencies. Even on nuclear, you can have dependencies. Like, that's not the case in the German case. But for instance, Hungary has nuclear energy. They have a dependence on this. Why? Because they purchased nuclear reactors, nuclear facilities from Russia. You have uranium as well, but also Russia. Meaning that they rely on Russian nuclear fuel, Russian maintenance to maintain their nuclear facilities. Feeding one of the reasons why, among the many reasons why Hungary was not so keen on sanctioning Russia, etc., etc. And then you bring the question of wind and solar, which are better on some aspects, not on all. Notably on dependence. For instance, if you want to build solar panels, you need some materials that we typically refer as critical raw materials. So, and also to build batteries for electric cars and stuff like that. This is something that is widely produced by China. Today, when it comes to critical raw material, depending on the critical raw material that we're talking about, China as a global controls about between 70 and 95% of the global market. So 95% of all the critical raw material in the world are produced or refined by China. And those critical raw materials are very important to build solar panels, chips, like electronic chips, batteries, all the sort of things that you need if you are doing a green transition, or, for instance, a rearmament. And so the EU is aware of that, and one of the things that they're doing to try to reduce also the dependency is, one, increase, for instance, the level of recycling. We need to recycle the critical raw material that we have in Europe so that we don't need to buy them from the Chinese again. Two, potentially open mines in Europe. So some countries have deposits of lithium, for instance. I'm using lithium because I know this example, but we have some deposit of lithium in Europe. Okay, how do we facilitate reopening mines in Europe so that we can also produce some of our own critical raw material, and also diversify access to other countries that have critical raw material, like, for instance, Australia, for instance, South America. And so you make trade deals with these countries to be able to access easier, to have an easy access to this centralized issue. Like, there is a whole strategy to diversify and reduce the dependencies. Like, it's another of the thing of priority of the Commission. And the Commission, this mandate is all about geopolitics, all about the economy, and so is how you reboost the European economy, reindustrialize, and reduce the dependency. And so those are made by both internal policies inside the EU, but also external policies, typically trade. Some countries where earth material need a bit of democracy. I mean, can try that with China, but I would not recommend personally. Doesn't France own lithium rights in a bunch of African countries? I don't know that. France has lost a lot of influence in Africa, so I wouldn't be so sure. Like, okay, we have clearly like a very strong influence when it comes to uranium. Like, that's clearly something that France is very careful about. But critical raw material, I'm not sure. I couldn't say. And again, like, France has lost quite a bit of influence in Africa these past few years, notably because of China, notably because of Russia, etc., etc. All right, let's continue. Blah 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 blah. Okay. EU decision makers, meanwhile, are desperate to find the balance between industry calls for fewer rules and repeated warnings from scientists and civil society that the simplification drive will harm European citizen health and the environment on which EU economy and food system rely. The tug of war speaks to broader concerns over whether the EU's ponderous decision-making machine is equipped to address the complex geopolitical, economic, and climate crisis that threatens to push the continent into decline. And there are mine projects in Spain, Sweden. There's also in Portugal and in Serbia. The EU was very supportive of a mine project in Serbia that created quite a lot of demonstrations or protests in Serbia, and the EU was like, we kind of need the stuff, so we're kind of going to look the other way. Yeah, there's a bit of that. People don't want to open. Everyone wants to reduce the dependencies, except when it means opening a mine in their backyard. That's the classic Noib, not in my backyard, not in your backyard. No, Noib is none of your business, and not in my backyard. Help me, chat. Like, my brain is melting. I need the acronym for the not in my backyard. Windmills don't need lithium, though. You need lithium for chips and the batteries. Because one issue of renewable energy is that it's not something that is like easy to control, and so you need batteries. And there you need lithium. So windmills do require, NIMBY, thank you. Where was I? Can we resort to piracy? Why? No, we will not resort to piracy. We're not bringing back the Caribbean's pirates. For now, the priorities, like I said, reopening mines in the EU, recycling, and diversifying the outside partners when it comes to getting those materials. And like very recently, the EU is about to sign, or supposed to sign, a deal with the US. The US who is also like also facing this dependency with China, as creating a sort of club, like what they call Pax Silica, that is supposed to facilitate the exchange of critical raw materials between the countries, the friendly countries, and basically reduce the dependency on China. Yeah, I'm not sure using the Russian playbook is really the European way of doing things. Not certain that will work out. And plus, again, the main actor is not China. It's not China. It's not Africa. It's China. All right, let's continue. The Commission has proposed 12 legal bills to reopen existing laws and scrap requirements seen as overly burdensome, promising billions in savings. These so-called omnibus packages address companies' long-standing demand to cut reporting obligations on emission, environmental impacts, chemicals, supply chains, data privacy, and more. Businesses say overlapping laws often force them to report the same information multiple times. Brussels has now an army of civil servants and diplomats rushing to get the job done. And although the number of simplification files is stacking up on their desk, companies say they need to go faster and make deeper cuts. That's partly because agreement to simplify some aspects of EU regulations are only just being integrated into national law. Once you change a law in Europe, at European level, well, it needs to go down at national level and then to apply to the real economy. So there's always like a lag between the law being adopted and application, which is normal. That's always the case. SMEs cannot feel the effects yet. The cycle is still ongoing with the first omnibus now landing at national level. This is why the frustration is still so high, said Véronique Willems, Secretary General of SME United. So there's nothing much to be done, it's just like wait and see. Like you just need to wait for the law to come into force and start applying. To boost economic growth, more decisive and faster decisions are required, and also way faster adoption by all EU member states once passed, said Joachim Svolbom. My Swedish is a bit rusty, so my apologies to any Swedish in the chat. CEO of Svebol, a Swedish TNT startup. But the EU's notoriously bureaucratic and multi-layered power structure is getting in the way, some argue. For example, the Commission's proposal to ease pesticides rules is a fantastic intermediate step, but isn't enough to promote innovation in the sector, said Eva van Ende, head of regulatory and sustainability at the Belgian biopesticide startup Biotalis. The plan to cut all this red tape is a stress test for the Commission, said Alexis Van Merke, Director General of the industry group Détergents Europe. By nature, the omnibus involves a lot of services, different departments, different units. It's quite a complex exercise for them. He said, noting that it takes time to get member states on board and to craft majorities. A spokesperson for the Commission told Politico that its simplification proposals have not been built in isolation, but are the results of intense ongoing work across Commission services to identify overlap, eliminate redundant measures, and remove inefficient provisions. Which, I mean, by definition, these simplification things are complicated to do. Why? Because you have to take an existing law, which is built on compromises already, and kind of say, okay, where can we cut? Where can we cut in there? And then obviously you will have different services, intervene, say, well, this part is important, no, this part is important, etc., etc., with things that are intertwined with each other, because if you delete that article, where it impacts that other article, that impacts that other article, etc., so you have a kind of a domino effect. And so it's kind of like surgery to do these sort of things. Yeah, that's one way to do. Not exactly the sort of democracy as commonly understood. So yeah, like doing this simplification drive is by definition extremely complicated. How much does Frontex represent in the EU budget? Not much, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it's peanuts. It's peanuts. Like the annual budget is around 1 billion euro. So that means that over an annual a pre-annual way is like 7-8 billions. It's not much. When you have a budget of hundreds of billions, why not streamline it rather than scrap it? Bah, same issue. Like technically, they're not like the technique what they're doing is they streamline it. Like their job is to streamline rather than completely delete things. But again, streamlining is equally complicated because things are interconnected with each other. There are different political priorities because again, it's a law. So that means like it's not the Commission just in its side of the thing, doing their things on their side. Well, they're changing the law, so they need to ask the parliament and also member states, the council, to approve these things. And of course, they're going to have different opinions, so that makes an already complex task even more complicated because you have more cooks around the table, which is normal because we're dealing with the law. And so, yeah, the legislators must have their grain of salt to add to this. So, by definition, it is extremely complicated to do these sort of things. Especially when you're doing that with a big pressure, because normally, like, it's not unusual. Like, it's not something that is out of that has never seen before. Like that the commission would say, okay, we need this law is a bit old. We're going to cut things in there that are irrelevant, etc., etc., etc. But usually, you do that on laws that have been there for quite a lot of time. It's not as sensitive politically. You take the time of doing things, so it's a slow process. There, this simplification drive is much more political than technical. It's not that the laws are obsolete and that therefore you need to cut in them because those rules are not adapted anymore. Is that you are making you are making political choices to lighten the level of obligations, which means it's a political assessment, and people will have different political assessments on what needs to be scrapped or not scrapped. Again, making the process longer and everything. And again, like you talk about pesticides, yeah. Some will say yes. Scrapping pesticide would be bad because what about the impact? I mean, you would increase insects or that would damage agriculture and everything. Others will tell you, yeah, but if we allow pesticides, it's going to have an impact on health, on biodiversity, etc. So again, competing interests that are both legitimate. How do you find the way in the middle? And that's the job of politics. Where was I? Okay, the Commission agrees that European industry faces a range of challenges, the spokesperson said, adding it had already made unprecedented progress in its simplification drive. Many of the industries Politico spoke to said that some of the Commission's ideas on how to simplify laws are getting derailed during negotiations with the European Parliament and member countries, which have joint powers to amend, pass, and block EU legislation. Like I said, everyone has their own vision. We are concerned that the simplification ambition tends to erode during the legislative process, said Thibaut Pivetta, General Secretary at the European Mollusk Producer Association, which represents shellfish farmers across the bloc. I mean, as I've said in the past, just like you have Rule 34 of the internet, you have Rule 34 of lobbying. If something exists, there's a lobby about it. Politico is very pro deregulation. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, it depends of which journalist is writing, but I mean, they're making a piece about the view of the industry. So yeah, the article is about the people who are asking for deregulation in this case, so it makes sense. Is there a Godwin point for lobbying? Oh, good question. What could be the equivalent of a Godwin point for lobbying? Huh. So the argument that you bring out to kind of automatically win a disagreement. Godwin point is a corruption. I don't like this decision from this decision or the direction of travel. Oh, it has to be corruption. It has to be undue influence. I think that's probably the Godwin point of lobbying. Like in lobbying related debates. Or it's corruption, it's undue influence, corporate capture, this sort of thing. I think that's the Godwin point. That's the argument you use to end the discussion. Or conspiracy theory? I mean, okay, it could work for both. It could work for both. It works both for conspiracy theory and Godwin point. Like the conspiracy theory would be more it's related. It's corruption. Corruption, yeah. I don't know. I think it works for both. It works for both. All right. The only conspiracy theory I believe in is that the dodo still exists. Is that the dodo exists or still exists, or that it existed at any point in time? I mean, dodo are dodo extinct? They are extinct dodos. Yeah, they're extinct. Yeah. The dodos still exist. Wasn't there like I'm not sure if it's for the dodo or another, like the idea of recreating like species that had disappeared by cloning and genetics. At some point there was I think a debate about like okay, could we not bring back dodos? Could we not bring back no, the Tasmanian devil I think it still exists, but what's the other one that disappeared in Australia? The marsupial thing. The tiger of Tasmania? Yeah, the tiger of Tasmania. Tasmanian tiger, yeah. I think at some point there was a debate on whether or not you could use genetics to bring back extinct species. I think there was also debate, like they found remains of mammoth, you know, the big elephants from the Ice Age, and there were debates. Okay, could it be possible to clone mammoth using the DNA we collected, reconstructing the DNA of mammoth, and then bringing back a species from the dead? Like I think it was mostly a debate, like a theoretical debate about the ethics of genetics, more than anything. Anyway, where's my bloody thing? There. The Smilodon, yeah. I also believe that there's probably some crazy... Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Like, the crazy thing is that we know better outer space than deep sea. Like, we know actually very little of deep sea. And, like, I think, like, still every year we're discovering new species, I mean, in general, but particularly in the sea. Like, you go... I mean, there's all the theories about the Mariana Trench, where we barely know what is at the bottom of there. Mermaids are real. Okay, I'm not following you on that one. Okay, I'm not following you on the mermaid thing. On that one, you're on your own. You're on your own on this one. But yeah, crazy things at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, I believe that. Like we don't know these ecosystems very very well, because I mean, as Topi is saying, that they're not easy to access. It might have been the weight or something. I don't know. I I can't say. We'll put that on the unreliable narrator. The Greek version or the Nordic version? It spoke broken French. Are you sure you were not in Amsterdam or somewhere, like you just met a drunk French in the sea? That's also a possibility. All right, let's keep going. Reread that. Ah, voilà. The negotiation showed a tendency to add conditionality and reporting requirements rather than removing them, he added. With the proposal to ease data rules, for example, business associations have complained that diplomats are gutting the most critical simplification measures from the Commission's text, which they say will make life more difficult for industry, not easier. Sorry. Companies made similar statements on the proposal to ease environmental planning rules and a recently adopted simplification package on chemicals. Martinas Barissas, Internal Market Director at Business Europe, the largest industry lobby in Brussels, said that instructions on further regulatory burden reduction for companies are drowning in the inertia of working-level discussions. That criticism has been relayed by Commission officials to national delegations and MEPs on several occasions, as Brussels shifts the blame for regulatory burden onto capitals that don't implement EU rules properly. So basically, everyone is blaming each other. Why are the rules more complicated than before? Commission, people will blame the Commission. Commission will answer, well, actually, it's you, Parliament, who adds new rule, and it's you, member states, who also add new rules at national level that are not required by EU law. So it's kind of the Spider-Man meme where everyone is pointing at the other. Negotiations between the Commission, EU governments and lawmakers have been the hardest for files where countries see a genuine risk that undoing EU laws could harm European health, privacy, or access to clean environment. So that's the key thing, okay? What is the limit between simplification that can be justified and deregulation that put people at risk? It's forcing the EU, its decision makers and companies to reckon with inherent tensions between the bloc's competitiveness and green goals. Of course, it's easier for companies if you don't have any kind of environmental rules, but you're kind of screwing over the idea that, okay, we are supposed to become green. If you... just a while notification, okay, that's fine. Okay, the Commission has received lots of criticism for suggesting that water rules should be reviewed to ease restrictions on mining projects, for instance. Again, tension between conflicting interests. You want to facilitate new mining projects to reduce our dependencies on Russia, on China and the US, etc., etc. Well, then maybe we need to ease the restriction on water, because otherwise it's too complicated for companies to open a mine in the EU. It's too costly, and so no mine will be open, and so we'll stay dependent on China. Again, which of the competing interests do you prioritize? Becoming less dependent or protecting the local environment around mines. That's the problem in many of those, is that it's not black and white decisions. You have good arguments on both sides and you need to make, well, a balance. Several of the companies and industries that Politico spoke to, including French water and recycling company Veolia, warned that simplification should not be used as a vehicle to weaken and repeal the essential text of the Green Deal from the last mandate. Introducing new rules for companies only to review them a few months later could also turn the EU into an unpredictable place to do business, some say. I would argue that indeed it's bad governance to adopt a law and then change it a few months later, because you're like, what's the point of me respecting EU law if that law is going to be changed a year later. Is it also about losing legal requirement for offshore windmills? Yeah, there are debates about that. Yeah, indeed. It's part of the discussions as well. You have that. You have rules about where can you place solar panels. You have debates about what whether you should, to which extent should you prevent like fishermen to access certain areas to fish, notably around like offshore windmills, that sort of thing. So it's a bit everywhere. You have a better proposal. Feel free to send it to von der Leyen. Where was I? Alright. Last year, for example, businesses complained about the introduction, posing and rewriting of anti-deforestation rules, which they say was making life more complicated. We are all in favor of simplification if it happens well in advance and it's well communicated, said Bart van der Vetero, head of government relations and ESG engagement at Nestlé. Scrap off the rules. Make me dictator. See? Easy. I don't get why people are like complaining when there are very easy solutions. The only flaw in your plan, I see the merit of the plan. The only flaw in it is that you should be the one becoming the dictator. I don't think that's the right way. I think I would be better in that role. So good idea. I'm going to improve it by saying, oh, actually, I'm going to be the one deciding. It's better for everyone, I think. I could be vice dictator. And we're going to create a new institutions where people will all be vice dictator and we'll call that a parliament. What could possibly go wrong? It's not a democracy. No. We're all dictators. But we're all equal dictators. And we decide to vote on which dictator is right on any given file. See? That's a dictatorship that is thinking out of the box. So where was I? When we look at simplification, it is mainly files, let's face it, that have to do with the transition of society and of industry to more sustainable approaches, he added. Some industries are now calling for a pause on new laws to give the economy time to implement all the changes. After that simplification wave, what we need is a predictability wave, said Van der Marke from Detergent Europe, so that we have 5 to 10 years to really work on it and implement everything. Others say Brussels' red tape bonfire is only scratching the surface and that the root of Europe's competitiveness problems run much deeper. The real issues are energy costs and carbon tax that make European manufacturing fundamentally uncompetitive, said Ineos Longden. Until those are fixed, imports will continue to flow into Europe and investment will continue to flow to the US and China, he added. So the problems might not be just legislation, it might be elsewhere. Whew, we made it. That was the final article of today. Any questions on that or on anything else before we close for today? Up. Surviving barely. I have to admit, it's coming in a bit clutch. But in the end, we did kind of a normal stream, like a bit less than 3 hours. Decent. Comes in first, the egg or the chick. I'm fatigué. How do we balance deregulation with the need for regulation? Ah, that's the beauty of politics there. That's the beauty of politics. You need The balance between that is, well, you need, for instance, facts. You take decision on the basis of objective facts, be it science, being studies and everything, so that you can determine what could be the consequences of this or that. One of the criticism made against the omnibuses, so the simplification laws, is that due to their nature, there are a few that are exempted from actual impact assessments. So the commission is coming out saying, yeah, well, I think it's going to have this impact. But actually, they don't do a proper impact assessment, so it's kind of, yeah, I think it's like that. Which is not necessarily, let's say, making it rock solid. At the same time, if you say, well, I need to make an impact assessment for every omnibus, well, that takes time. So meaning that you want to do a simplification because you urgently need to improve the economic situation, but if you do an impact assessment for every law, well, that means that you're delaying for 1 year, or maybe a bit less, every process, which goes against the principle that you need to go fast. So again, constantly having to balance things. You can call Saul, but unfortunately, Saul is not a EU civil servant. So, but yeah, that's all the issue around this is that, and in general politics, is that you have conflicting interests at play. You want to go fast, but you can't go too fast. You want to improve competitiveness, but not at the price of killing the environment. You want to cut rules, but you also want to have predictability. So you're constantly juggling with competing priorities, competing interests, with the fact that people have different sense of priorities. Obviously, the lobby of industry has a different view from a green MEP, who has a different view from a member state. And yeah, somehow you need to find a compromise. And that's why politics happen. I sense a pattern in your solutions. Again, I think you have decent intuitions, except on the landing, because you keep thinking that way you should be the one being the one making the difference. I think it should be rather me. Again, to be discussed. To be discussed. All right, people. Let's close for today. Program for the rest of the week. So Friday news review in French as usual on Friday at 5. Next week, final week of normal stream of the season. So on Tuesday at 7, news review in English. Friday is gonna be FAQ politique for the final stream in French, and the week after I'll do a gaming stream. I'll let you know on the Discord for all that. Speaking of which, all the link to the Discord, the socials, and all that. I hope that you enjoyed today's content. My brain is personally completely fried, so I will enjoy commenting somewhere in my flat. I hope that you enjoyed. Don't forget to thank you for those who followed. Do I accept English question in the French stream? I mean, if you understand French, fine. I mean, I don't have. It's just that the stream will be in French, so I will speak in French. But if you understand French, yeah, sure. I don't have a problem with an English question. I will not just be switching from English to French constantly. Like in general, because you're new, I do 2 streams a week, one in English, one in French. Normally, Tuesday is the English one, Friday is the French one. Today was a bit different because I had a professional agenda thing, but that's kind of the structure for it. All right, well, have a good one, guys. Don't forget to follow. If you have a Prime lying around, do toss a coin to your streamer. That's always appreciated. And I hope to see you either on Friday in French or next week, or next Tuesday for the stream in English. Have a good one, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.